Buenas tardes, buenos días a todos y a todas. Es un gusto saludarlos.
It's a pleasure to greet you all and to officially welcome you to the 7th edition of the series of webinars of Global Real in Focus. And today we would like to talk about innovation in teaching and learning processes and curricular innovation. This is a webinar that, organized together with CSUCA and with Overall Global as part of a series of works that we are doing before the Congress of Higher Education next month. I would like to communicate some technical things or details. Belinda is the president of the this device, and I would like to mention some technical aspects first. The chat box will not be will be disabled, so you will have to use the Q&A session of the toolbox in Zoom in order to make your comments or your questions. We'll be collecting those comments or questions along the webinar. The webinar has simultaneous interpretation, English, Spanish. For those who prefer, you can listen to the webinar in English. You should go to the icon with the glove in the toolbar of Zoom and choose English. If you want to listen to the Spanish interpretation or to the Spanish channel, choose the Spanish language option. It's an honor, and we want to thank the CSUCA for sharing this activity with us. After this, I would like to give the floor to Belina Flores, that is the president of the association. Thank you, Nicolas. Good morning in the Americas, good afternoon in Europe. We hope that you are all doing well and your families are doing well. It's an honor that you are participating in this important event that we are having today. This webinar called Innovation in Teaching and Learning Processes and Quality Assurance is a virtual forum organized by the CSUCA, the Observatory of the European Union for Education, Overall Global, and the ULAC Foundation. I would like to welcome all the participants that are connecting over Zoom or social media. We will have simultaneous interpretation, English into Spanish and Spanish into English. And I would like to introduce the representatives of the organizations that coordinate this forum. We have the Dean of the University of Honduras, that is also the president of the CSUCA, Dr. Francisco Jose Herrera Alvarado. We also have today with us Dr. Carlos Alvarado Cerezo, that is the General Secretary of the CSUCA, Mrs. Elizabeth Colucci, that is Project Manager of Overall Global, and Dr. Adrian Bonilla, that is the Director of the ULAC Foundation. I would like now to give the floor to the President of the CSUCA and also Dean of the University of Honduras, Dr. Francisco Herrera Alvarado, who will be introducing presenting the seminar. Thank you, everybody. I would like to greet all of you, all the authorities that are with us today, this morning, this afternoon. We're happy in our university, in our region, to be able to hold these type of sessions. The world has suffered a crisis, and education sector is facing huge challenges and is rethinking about education innovation, and we want to have lasting innovations in order to improve the quality of education. The challenge has been huge. We have not been able to cover all the statistics that we have in the area, but we can say that 1,500 students of higher education sector saw that their dreams were interrupted and they couldn't go to on-site classes. For us, educators and institutions, and this has been a great challenge at a global level in order to provide these young people a promising future. They are the future of the world. And we, as educators in the higher education sector, we should be able to give them the skills, the things that they need in order for them to continue their higher education. This has been a very complex situation. And we have been able to create a comfort zone because we have young students and young professors who, over the screen, have been able to have the digital classes and to convey or transfer the knowledge in different areas. This was not desirable because it was very complex, but it was very complex for things to happen otherwise. Not all the institutions were prepared for this sudden change. We were working on this little by little, but all of a sudden we were facing a new reality. And as a result, we have had to understand together what the best teaching and learning procedures are, in spite of the fact that we don't have a parameter or a variable in order to compare. We don't have a variable that tells us what is okay and what is not okay. We need to try to determine what quality in education means now. We have these huge questions and the answers are not here yet. As higher education educators, we need to understand that the answers will come up in the middle term. So therefore, it's important that all of us, all the educators across the world, are to be patient in order to establish a critical roadmap so that universities know that they are doing things in the best possible way and that we are trying to seek the best results for the future generations that will be leading our countries in the near future. We are honored as a university to be here with you today. We are also honored to be here as the region. The CSUCA gathers 24 universities of Central America and the Caribbean. We are doing a lot in order to reach these shared goals. I would like to greet all of you, especially Francisco Alarcón and Carlos Alvarado Cerezo, for all the efforts you are making to organize these webinars and all the meetings for the future of Central America and the Caribbean. A big hug, and it's a pleasure to be here today with you. Thank you, Mr. Dean and President of CSUCA. Now, I will give the floor to Dr. Carlos Alvarado Cerezo, that is the Secretary General of the SCUCA. First, I would like to greet Francisco Herrera, that is President of the SCUCA and Dean of University of Honduras. He also would like to greet Adrian Bonicio, that is the director of the ULAC Foundation, and also Elizabeth Colucci, that is the project manager of Obreal Global, and also Nicolas Patrici, because they have helped us a lot with these activities. I also would like to greet the Assistant Secretary General of CSUCA, and also I would like to greet Belinda Flores, that belongs to the Autonomous University of Honduras. And also, I would like to thank you, the distinguished panelists that we have today, and we will appreciate you sharing your experiences. Your experiences are very important for the group of universities in Central America. I would like to thank you also the presence of teachers and professors and academic authorities that belong to the CSUCA. On behalf of the General Secretariat of the SCAUCA, it is a pleasure to be part of this virtual forum regarding the innovation and teaching and learning processes and quality assurance. This is also an opportunity to greet you all and to meet you all. I would like to thank the support and the commitment of the authorities of Obreal Global and the ULAC Foundation, and also would like to value the commitment of Belinda Flores, President of CICEBAES, for organizing this academic activity that is so important. The goal is to try to understand how innovation has been managed in different teaching and learning procedures. Those are fundamental aspects for our universities and for the commitment that we have with our societies, that is to guarantee constant improvement of our higher education processes. It's also important to work and to take into consideration that our universities are democratizing entities that promote knowledge and thought, and also contribute to the integral education of individuals. This also promotes development and regional integration, especially in these times of a lot of uncertainty. Within this context, we know that education is renewing, improving, in order to include all those changes that are so important and that we need so much right now. Education quality is always one of the inherent qualities of our universities. We need to ensure it, we need to keep it, and we need to promote those things that could consolidate the three processes of our universities, that are extension, in research, and education. These are the fundamental pillars of our universities, and therefore the CICEBAES should promote spaces of dialogue between the different directors and the managers of the curricula of the different universities, and that we have a dialogue with key actors across the world, because this will help us to create scenarios to be able to understand and to define together the new or emerging professions, the new professional approaches for now and for the future, according to the needs of human activities. In order to meet our goals, it's important that the governments and education institutions create mechanisms of consensus in order to advance on creating better resilience capacity in order to face future crises, regardless of their nature. To conclude, I would like to thank the presenters and the speakers of today. I also would like to thank the organizers, CICEBAES, Mr. Francisco Alarcón, Mrs. Belinda Flores. Also, I would like to thank Obra Global and the ULAC Foundation for participating in this important activity, and for sharing with us all those experiences and knowledge that will help us to be stronger and to improve our activities. For example, the 9th University Congress that we have next month. I would like to greet you all and to send all of you my regards. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Alvarado Cerezo. For me, it is a pleasure to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Colucci, that is project manager of Obra Global, and she will now prepare, make a welcome message.
Okay, thank you so much, Belinda. I will take advantage of the interpretation and address you in English today, also because we have some of our panelists today who will be speaking in English. We are very pleased to offer this webinar in both languages. My name is Elizabeth Colucci. I represent the Obriel Global Observatory. We have a long history of cooperation with SUCA in Central America. We've led together some very important projects. The theme of the webinar today is very much an outcome of a project that we conducted together between 2015 and 2018, a project that many of you in the audience may know or may have participated in. It was a project called HICA on qualifications frameworks in Central America. But that project allowed us to generate a more systemic discussion in Central America on the quality of higher education and the quality of teaching and learning, and how regional frameworks like qualifications frameworks, how regional collaboration in the quality assurance sector can be an inspiration for and a guidance for teaching and learning innovation. And that very much brings us to our topic here today. So I look forward to listening to the panelists. We continue to collaborate with SUCA as part of what has now been formalized as a Central American chapter of Obriel Global. We have chapters also in South America, in the Caribbean, in Africa, and in India, and of course in Europe, where we're headquartered. We're very pleased that we can concretize this relationship. SUCA has been a member of Obriel Global for quite some time. We've worked often on a project basis together, but we feel now with this new chapter that we can extend our collaboration far beyond just the project work. We're pleased to be supporting SUCA in the preparations of a very important Central American higher education conference or congress, which is taking place in a few months' time. And once again, the outcomes of this webinar will feed into the deliberations at that conference. So just to say that it's a pleasure for me personally, and also as part of Obriel Global, to continue this fruitful relationship with SUCA. And we hope that the topics we discuss here today are not just relevant for the Central American colleagues participating, but relevant for a much wider global audience, which is what we strive to bring to the table as Obriel Global Observatory, to really facilitate a much more dynamic, multi-regional dialogue around important topics in higher education transformation. So that's all I have. Wishing you very interesting discussions, and thank you so much.
Gracias, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I would like to present now Dr. Adrian Bonilla. He is the Executive Director of the ULAC Foundation, and he will give a welcome statement. Thank you. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the initiative, this invitation, the National University of Honduras, the authorities, the Central American Higher Education Council, and Obriel Global, which is an organization that has been working with the higher education and in the collaboration with Latin America and the Caribbean, Central America, with other countries for a very long time. The ULAC Foundation, as you may know, is an organization, international organization, intergovernmental organization that was created 10 years ago, and its goal is to relate both regions, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Europe, regarding certain agendas. It is the result of the decisions of the heads of states and high authorities, and the idea is for these decisions, these mandates may be implemented, disseminated and fostered by the societies, which are the aim, the existence of all international organizations. Among the different decisions and deliberations of the heads of states of Latin America, Caribbean, and European countries, there's a very important one, which is the proposal of the goal to build a common space for higher education between Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean as a goal to strengthen the bi-regional association. This is part of the documents. It is part of the plan of action, and that was presented in 2015 by the heads of states. What is this? This is part of the work we all have to do. This is a common higher education space. I think that we may have two viewpoints. One has to do with the possibility for the states and government officials to adopt regulations and common policies. Another one that is not contradictory is to understand it as a common space for the higher education as the set of actions that the higher education institutions and their actors develop. This is, in fact, what exists in reality. What we have is a multiplicity of thousands of agreements between European universities and universities in Latin America and the Caribbean, thousands of joint projects among the universities, researchers from both regions, an academic community that is vibrant, and regulations, norms, common standards or policies that the states may design have one goal or should have one goal, that is to strengthen the capacity of the academic community. The idea of having a bi-regional community that needs a common logic, a series of interactions that allow the production of knowledge. That is what everything is about: producing knowledge, disseminate knowledge, carry out researches, and teach. Not Not only that, that research, that knowledge, that teaching should be transformed into concrete possibilities to be applied in the societies that with their resources finance that research and teaching. Societies like the Latin American and the Caribbean societies have many needs. These needs are solved through the technology, companies, innovation that are the result of the production of knowledge. This is the substantial element of the education community. This allows the strengthening of that goal and has to do with norms, with common policies. In that sense, the possibility of building a common space for higher education involves making visible this multiplication that already exists of academic relations between institutions and persons from one region and the other. Regulations are important, but are difficult. They exist and are based on bilateral relations. But the possibility of having common standards in Latin America and the Caribbean is something quite difficult because we have different education legislations in the different countries that organize these research and education levels. Some states have more influence, and some other universities are autonomous and are self-regulated within within the societies. So what we need is to try to share the heterogeneous elements with what already exists in the region. With these precedents, I just want to highlight that together with Obreal and other organizations, CISUC as well, and other Latin American European organizations, we have carried out joint projects. One of them is the one we are developing in these webinars, for example, by Obreal Global, but also in the ULAC Foundation with the support of all the organizations that it's called the Matrix, which is the systematization of the necessary conditions for the development of this common higher education space in formal institutional terms, a space that, from my perspective, already exists in reality, because the reality of higher education is the one produced by students, by professors, already operates, already exists, is the one expressed in the different articles, teaching, and practices that relate the education with the society. So I just want to thank you for the continuity of this discussion, to my friends of Obra Global, also to University of Honduras, CISUCA, and all the professors, researchers, students that are benefited and articulated, and with their proposals make possible these initiatives. Thank you. Thank you, Adrián. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our panelists today, Dr. Elizabeth Noonan, Dr. Maria Quello, Susan Francis Salazar, and Leah Cruz as well. From now on, I will leave the webinar on the hands of Francisco Alarcón, Deputy Secretary General and Director of the Academic Area of the CISUCA. He will be moderating this important webinar. Thank Yes. Good morning to everyone from Guatemala. I am Francisco Alarcón, Director of the Academic Area of the CISUCA. And as Belinda has said, I have to lead this virtual discussion. I would like to start making some comments to the panelists that are going to tackle this topic. In the last years, there have been huge changes and progress in areas of knowledge that have been strategic, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, bioengineering, processing and transference of great quantities of data, volumes of data, developments that are converging and are making possible all these automatization processes for the production of products and services. The fourth industrial revolution, as some may call it. This is bringing forward deep changes in labor markets and in professions, within university and in general as well. Many jobs, entire professions are being changed or are disappearing, and new professions are emerging and will be emerging in the next years. This pandemic that we are going through since 2019 is accelerating digital transformations, progresses, innovation in terms of technological and scientific progress that affect the society in general. In different fora, it's been asked for higher education in the Americas, and that has been focused on the content and the use of the traditional teaching methods and it's not paying attention to key skills that persons need and will need in order to be successful citizens and professionals and decision makers in the 21st century. The achievement of these skills have to do with the methods that are used for teaching, for learning, and with the way in which this learning is evaluated than with the content itself. It is a fact that society and the labor market is changing in a fast way, and what we offer in the Central American region has to change. Assuring and providing accreditation for higher education may be a powerful tool for change, for innovation of teaching and learning processes to continuously improve these processes, or it may become a bureaucratic burden and an obstacle for the changes that we need to achieve. What is the key to achieve the first option and avoid the second one? What can be learned from different parts of the world? And our dear friend Elizabeth Colucci was saying that Fora follows up different projects such as HICA and proposals of projects such as Can Innovate. As Elizabeth was saying, we should develop this qualification framework for the Central American region to achieve the expected learning. And also there's a proposal from CISUCA and Obra Global with Erasmus Plus that is oriented to developing innovation centers, learning centers within universities, CISUCA universities. From different perspectives in this fora, the different perspectives are the universities on the one hand and QA agencies in South America and Europe on the other hand, is that we can explore the possibilities in the region and international possibilities in this matter. We want to reflect on that this morning, and today we are very lucky. We have experts with great expertise, with a long career, and we're going to discuss with them these different topics. We have Susan Francis Salazar. She's from Costa Rica. She's doctor in education, professor and researcher from the University of Costa Rica. She has played different and important roles in different regional bodies of the system within the system and the regional system of research and postgraduate studies, and of the Central American Agency of Accreditation. She has directed the postgraduate program and the Institute of Investigation of the University of Costa Rica. And she was deputy dean as well. We also have the presence of Dr. Elizabeth Noonan. Elizabeth is the Director of Quality Enhancement in University College Cork in Ireland. She is responsible for the development and management of quality processes within the university, for research within the university. Between 2014 and 2017, she has worked in the International Fora for the Improvement and Enhancement of Quality and Learning. She established and managed a series of projects, research projects, and previously she was the Director of Academic Progress and Academic Policies, and she started her career in higher education in quality assurance in University of Edinburgh. Lea Susana Cruz is also present. She is from Honduras. She is a professor in the Escuela Superior of Honduras. She has 2 master's degree in education administration from Colombia, and also assessment and evaluation of education quality. Lea Cruz has played a key role in higher education in the region, and I want to mention that she was Deputy Dean of the National Pedagogical University of Honduras. Leah is now the president of the Central American Council of Accreditation, CCA, and she's the vice president of the Latin American System for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. Finally, Dr. Maria Kello. She will speak from Brussels. She's from Finland. She is the director of the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. She has been in that position since 2012. She has long experience in the development of policies and the practice of quality assurance in higher education in Europe. Prior to joining ENQA in 2011, Maria worked for 9 years in the field of international higher education. She carried out a number of projects and studies on international higher education, in particular in the fields of transnational education, student mobility, student services, promotion of higher education in Europe, and human resource management in higher education. This is an amazing panel, and the idea is for us to have a first round of presentations, interventions. Each panelist will make an initial presentation, and then we will continue with some questions, with a Q&A with all the persons that are participating today. Thus, everyone, please, as the presentations continue, you can write down your questions through the Q&A tool that is available in the platform, as Nicolas mentioned before. Dr. Ana Barrera from the ULAC Foundation will be gathering these questions, select them in order to present them to our panelists. Throughout this conversation, we will be asking these questions. So without further ado, we are going to start this first round. I will give the floor to Dr. Susan Francis Salazar. You have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of you for this great invitation. I am proud of being able to share this panel with all of you, friends and colleagues from the region. I would like to share my screen because it will help me to respect the time limits that have been established for today's panel. I was invited to share with all of you my position and to contribute elements regarding some of the questions that have been key to support the reflections or the statements presented by Francisco and by the authorities of this forum. One of the questions is, what is my perception regarding the key competencies that are key for those who will be working as citizens and professionals and as decision makers in the current context and in the future? Because of my education, I could talk about some terms that could help me build my ideas. And I consider that there are 3 terms that are crucial. The first is education, the second is professional, and the third is innovation. Those are the elements about which I would like to establish a dialogue. The 3 elements have a common element, that is the context. When we talk about education currently, we recognize that education is a group of experiences. We are not talking about a group of courses or a curriculum. We are talking about a group of experiences in order for human beings to progress. So education is a humanization process. And if we relate this to the professional area, this means that a professional has a group of knowledge and experiences that would help him or her to make decisions. But not only that, but he or she will be responsible for his or her actions or decisions. And we relate that to innovation. Innovation is the compliance with requirements where there are new elements, and these elements are related to the context, and therefore that helps me recognize the fact that we have different dimensions in professional education. We have personal dimension, we have disciplinary and interdisciplinary dimensions. And there is another strong element that we need to take into consideration when we analyze our experiences, that are our citizenship competences. And we need to take into consideration three things. When we talk about innovation and competences, we should not make general ideas, because we need some adaptation when we try to adapt these concepts to other contexts. Innovation is a contextual element, and it's necessary to understand the context and the needs that we have within that context. So we need to take into consideration the social context and the educational context. Recognizing the context will be fundamental so that the innovation process or that process of change is an initiative, and it's a process that could lead to the creation of those key competences. And in those three dimensions, I identified these key competences. They are not the only ones, but I recognize that they are fundamental when compared to others that are specific within each profession. Fundamentally, we should recognize that in personal dimension, interpersonal communication will be fundamental. A professional needs to be able to communicate with his or her peers, but also with those with whom he or she works. It is also necessary to acknowledge that that person should have a leadership, a professional that is able to create new projects, to identify him or herself as an individual, and she or he should be able to disrupt the situation or the context. We have examples. For example, the professionals that are living the pandemic in 2020 and 2021, we have had to make disruptions. We have tried to find new alternatives. In universities, we have to work in order to rethink our practices and to accept that the online environment or the digital environment, which we were kind of afraid of, is an option. The management of uncertainty will be necessary. Emergencies will always be there. We need to be resilient, and we need to have the capacity to rebuild ourselves and be more flexible. When it comes to the disciplinary and interdisciplinary dimension, it's better the easiest one for us. As Francisco was saying, we have made emphasis on knowledge and contents, but we also need to recognize that we need to understand that work management and critical analysis of the problems are key. I need to understand and to identify the problems in which I will get involved. I am responsible for my own education because I need to have this processes that are reliable in order to be able to find diverse areas that will help me make better decisions. And the citizen dimension that I think is very important right now, because we now have the need of professionals that are responsible with ourselves, with the society, and with the world. We are responsible for our education. We need to establish a group of situations for which we will be responsible for. I have to be responsible for myself because I am a person with a body, and therefore I need to be healthy. And also I have to be responsible before the society because any of my practices have an influence on others. And I have to be responsible to the world because we cannot understand countries as islands. Interpersonal relationships and the relationship with other professionals require professional empathy. It's a new way of interacting with others. And therefore, we need to promote a new type of innovation from the curricula. And I'm trying to think about teaching and learning experiences. I don't think these are not simultaneous processes. We need to connect, to relate those two processes. And the two processes could be built in a separate way. And that is where our problem lies, Francisco, because we have built learning processes without understanding how people are taught. If we want to have different methods of teaching and learning, we need to rethink the roles of teachers and students. The student should be understood as the builder of knowledge after his or her interactions with others. And we need to understand for that how students learn, what they need to know. We need to find and identify problems, those problems that are not on YouTube or on Google, what those problems are. We need to use pedagogical principles that are fundamental because human beings only learn those things that have a cultural value for the communities to which we belong. We need to understand what is important in our society, for example, in the Caribbean society, in the society of Costa Rica, or Honduras, or the society of Europe. We need to identify those elements that promote our learning experience. And we also need to recognize the expertise that we need to have to relate theory and practice, or theory and reality. Research says that expert teachers have the capacity to present those relationships. So we need to have an education innovation with teachers that are prepared and that feel that they are experts in their areas, but also that they are experts in education. I would like to give the floor back to you, Francisco, so you can give the floor to somebody else. Thank you, Susan. Now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Elizabeth Noonan. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Sorry, apologies for my delay. Thank you very much, Susan. That was a very interesting presentation, and some of the remarks that I wish to make will resonate with those very important points that you made about holistic development of students through our education process. I would like to make 3 points in my intervention, and particularly I want to speak from the perspective of Ireland. I think the last year has taught us that life is very unpredictable, and that we are all ultimately connected as citizens of this planet. And so change has been a constant, adapting to the changes that have occurred over the last number of years. But to go to our specific question, and speaking from the Irish context, we too have experienced disruption in the past. As many will know, we experienced a very profound recession which really challenged our country. And one of the things that has been seen as a beacon of hope to bring us from economic depression to a brighter future has been our education and training system. We currently have 1 million people in our education and training system. And one of the key enablers in terms of educational participation has been our qualifications framework, which permits learners to move from different levels of qualification, different types of institution, and also to bring informal and formal experience which can be recognized. So we have a qualifications framework which now has as a policy priority from government level the priority of encouraging and allowing transfer across our system. And that becomes important in respect of this question of the skills and competencies needed for professional and citizenship in the 21st century. It allows that people can engage with education at times in their lives when perhaps the need for upskilling becomes evident, or because, for example, they may wish to make career changes. So our system of qualifications allows that mobility, and within the qualifications framework, we now have a new movement towards micro-credentials, which are very small pieces of credited learning that allow, again, specific technical or professional learning to take place. One of the things that my country has put in place, and it is principally as a function of our response to the recession in 2011, is a very ambitious national skills strategy to 2025. And that's because the priority is to ensure that Ireland retains a very strong emphasis on having a strong, well-educated workforce where the quality and also the relevance of our education and training is aligned to the needs of our people, to society and the economy. And one of the most important aspects of that strategy is that it involves various players. It involves and is a shared enterprise between citizens, between employers, between education and training providers. And as a consequence, we see, particularly within higher education, a very strong emphasis on ideas of employability. So our learning outcomes expressed in terms of employability skills, the engagement of employers actively in the development of our programs, the provision of learning opportunities which allow students to acquire the skills during their education, which will allow them to be effective contributors to society and to the economy. So that is very much our national picture. Within my own university, we have developed a very strategic approach to our curriculum, where we have placed significant emphasis on identifying the graduate attributes for all students who gain a qualification from University College Cork. And we've also placed emphasis not only on those transferable attributes, but also on the values. So we have a statement, wherever UCC graduates are in the world, they will be guided by the core values and attributes they have developed to become well-rounded, curious, self-aware individuals with an ambition to continually learn new skills, to be open to new ideas and make things happen. So our positioning of our curriculum is very much to ensure that not only do our students gain the requisite skills to contribute to society and economy, but that they also have the lifelong learning skills which equip them to learn into the future. And they also have life-wide skills where they have qualities of empathy and appreciation for different perspectives. In particular, the specific way in which this strategy has been delivered has been through the development of a connected curriculum, which connects our educational programs to the real world and also connects our research to inform our curriculum. And there are a number of ways in which students can develop these attributes and develop their values and dispositions. We have co-curricular offerings, we have professional placements and internships. There are extracurricular activities, for example, volunteering. There are community engagement opportunities, and there are also digital badges which allow students to learn a particular skill or to gain credentials for a particular activity that they have undertaken. And so overall at UCC, the emphasis on graduate values and attributes very much reflects the rapidly changing globalized world and the need for higher education to respond to that. And in doing so, to provide a variety of educational offerings which are diversified and which are personalized to the students themselves. Thank you. I'll finish there.
Muchas gracias, estimada Elizabeth. Vamos a continuar
Thank you, Elizabeth. We will now continue with this first round. And we're going to listen to the perspective of the QA agencies. We will now give the floor to Leah Cruz then. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Francisco, for the presentation. The approach that we are going to make, Maria and myself. And in that sense, I want to express that following the central topic of the forum, I want to express the satisfaction it means for my organization from the CCA to contribute our particular viewpoint, the experience we have gathered following the line of innovation, transformation, etc. We believe, as the Central American Council of Accreditation in Higher Education, that universities, if they want to survive with prestige and quality amidst the transformations we live in these accelerated times of changes, the transformations on a daily basis should be related to the process of innovation. We believe this is a key process that we cannot avoid. That's why innovation has become a fundamental element within the organizations. We believe that it's not usual for us to find in universities unity regarding innovation. The academia should be exclusively devoted to the transformation of the professions, of the curricula, providing new models to improve teaching and learning processes, as Susan has said. And in order to provide a response to the requirements of this digital society, an innovative university is more competitive. Many voices from the society express that in the case of education, innovation in the learning and teaching process is rooted in the past. It's hard to listen to this, but we need to find answers and try to change that. That is very important for these and other events. Prior to the Shizuoka Congress, they will be organized in order to change those stereotypes. Today, quality assurance has to do with social demands of transparency, impact, but it's also a symbol of commitment for those who participate in higher education. QA agencies are in charge of offering the standards, guidelines, and protocols to develop an objective evaluation of the universities and, in other cases, programs, graduate or postgraduate programs that allow people to certificate the quality. I think that QA agencies are also protagonists when it comes to rethinking learning and teaching processes. Today, quality assurance has acquired great level of professionalism, and documents that are being produced in our agencies, we have seen that at the national, regional, or international level, these are documents, they are not hidden guidelines. They are available in our websites, and this determines the fostering, or it makes universities become more competitive. That's why policies should be determined following innovation. This is the best way of sharing with the participants the contributions that QA agencies are doing in order to provide elements to the universities that are useful to them in the transformation of the curricula. The circumstances of this global health crisis has not been an obstacle for the universities to progress. The work carried out by them is essential. We need to highlight that they have adjusted their methodologies to the virtual modalities. It's a pleasure, it would be a pleasure to us to know about several actions that are being developed at national, regional levels, the contribution to innovation, to the curricula, and that are important elements to guarantee the quality of higher education in our region. For example, the CNAES, that is agency in Costa Rica, has continued quality assurance processes, and since last year has carried out 30 visits in a virtual way. Their work they are carrying out has to be highlighted. They have developed 2 different training programs. We cannot say that is not aligned with innovation. Also, since yesterday, we are offering virtual fora regarding the incorporation of global skills in different contexts for the design of the curricula. The CNEA in Nicaragua is about to start in April a accreditation process that is mandatory regarding quality assurance in all universities in Nicaragua. We see that this is a voluntary process, but in Nicaragua, the law establishes this is mandatory.
We also did a study regarding the response of the Central American postgraduate courses in 2019. and 2020. And we are evaluating different programs. And we are doing this based on the digital mode because of the crisis, the pandemic. And together with HCRS, we did an external evaluation to the UTP, that is the Technological University of Panama. We did that evaluation towards the end of last year, and also it was digital or online. Also, it's important to share this with you. We are also announcing today in this forum that we have the quality signature to certify those universities that are developing distant learning courses. And this does not only comply the technological equipment, but also that takes into consideration the regulation framework, the organization, the management, the pedagogical development of the universities. I think that this will be of great value for our universities and in these circumstances. Another important thing is that within 2 weeks, the CIASAS, that is the Ibero-American System of Quality of Assurance for Higher Education, and includes all the agencies of the region, together with Spain, Andorra, and Portugal, and all the countries of Latin America. We will be launching an education school. We were talking before about the professions that we need to develop in order to find the experts that could also participate in these Q&A procedures. We will have this education or QA education or training school. And this will be for our agencies, and we will also include in our faculty very important experts. And this is just a small a small mention of all the activities that we are doing. I just mentioned some because of time restrictions. Taking into consideration the QA perspective, the regional and national universities are complying with their mission. They are contributing to higher education institutions. They are contributing to universities. They are providing information so that they know about the changes that are requested in education and learning and teaching processes. So as to, they are also helping with the compatibility between different degrees, and they are trying to help universities to improve their positions in international rankings. We also know that QA and accreditation agencies are adapting their models. And this is because of the circumstances of this health crisis. To summarize, and also to conclude my intervention, I would like to appreciate and to praise the work done by accreditation and QA agencies in our region to guarantee the quality of higher education in our region through their evaluations to verify the consistency of undergraduate and graduate degree programs. We also recognize the contributions that they make in order to guarantee the graduation rates, the employability of the graduate students, and also the mobility of the students and professors. With the work done by these agencies, I call up in universities and the authorities of these universities, deans and deputy deans, to reflect and to find the mechanisms to strengthen these QA agencies, especially those that are performing below the standards, because, or maybe those agencies that are pilots, but are not agencies as such. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah. That's very interesting. We would like to know the experience and of QA agencies in Europe. In order to do so, we will give the floor to Maria Kelo. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this kind invitation. It really is a pleasure and an honor to be with you today. I've seen also from messages I have received that this is not only the Americans that are taking part in this event, but actually have global attendance in today's event. So a truly global conference for a truly globally connected environment where we live in. Some reflections from my side on this topic, and of course from the quality assurance perspective and from the European one. That's what I can represent. And it was very interesting to hear the other speakers. We really bring in different dimensions into the discussion. And in some way, I start already with what might sound as being in a direct contradiction to what Dr. Cruz was just saying, but actually when you look at it deeper, it isn't. I think quality assurance agencies have surely a role to play in how to quality assure and how to find new ways to quality assure innovative learning and teaching. However, I do think that it's not the quality assurance agencies that should be the protagonist in thinking of innovative higher education. That is really the job, in my view, of the higher education institutions together with their key stakeholders, the academics, very importantly, the students, the labor market, the public sector, all of this. Second important action or actor group is the national authorities. They have really an important role in supporting and encouraging innovation in higher education through specific policies, eventually related funding. Of course, institutions are more encouraged to act on something if there's also a financial envelope related to that. But in addition to such positive action in favor of innovative approaches, I think countries, especially in Europe, I don't know if this is the case for you also, they have to be really aware of the possible legal and regulatory restrictions that limit institutions' freedom and possibilities to think of learning and teaching in new ways that are better needed to today's societies and the expectations of students. And I'm talking about flexible learning paths, lifelong learning, recognition of prior learning, micro-credentials that were mentioned by Elizabeth, deeper international cooperation in higher education, such as establishment of joint programs, and of course, what we have seen happen as never before in the past year, e-learning. Before I go on, I would just like to make a word of warning. Of course, e-learning does not automatically mean innovation. I think many times we see in Europe that there is a bit of confusion. If you put a lecture online, you are being innovative. And of course, we all know that that is not the case. To really make good use of e-learning possibilities, the whole pedagogy, the offer, the style has to be thought very carefully. We recognize that in these times of crisis, institutions had really no choice. They went online within a day or two or week. And of course, creating a good online program might take months, sometimes years to develop. So that's not the level of expectation we have now. What we talk about is firefighting. That's what we've been doing. And there has been a recognition that whatever institutions have been able to offer has been good. I mean, it's been better than not providing anything to give an interruption to the teaching and learning process. But when we go to the longer term, we have to be really careful that when we talk about innovation in terms of e-learning, we have to look a bit deeper. So when we talk about the ministerial of the national authorities level, I would like to just mention something about the European context. We have the Bologna process, and within that we have regular ministerial conferences, the latest of which took place in November last year in Rome, which was of course then in practice online. And in that, there was a new vision for the European higher education area for the next 10 years, and it composed of these three I's: inclusive, interconnected, and indeed innovative. And what is meant in that context by innovative is to include flexible learning paths, student-centered learning, digitalization, and small units of learning, and specifically what we call micro-credentials. And I've inserted there on two of them that they have quality assurance implications. Of course, all of them have quality assurance implications. Flexible learning parts also importantly when we talk about stackability of credits, to create a full degree perhaps, we have to also think about how to assure the quality of the whole, which we expect usually to be more than the sum of its parts. The same ministerial communique or this kind of paper also lists some skills. What are the skills that we expect for the future? And those are innovative and critical thinking, emotional intelligence, leadership, teamwork, problem solving, entrepreneurial attitude, as well as intercultural and international competencies. So there are quite a prevalent role in the ministerial communique. And of course, in practice, or in theory, let's say, it means that all the 49 countries who have signed that declaration, they agree with doing this, in implementing this. Then, of course, the practical side takes a little bit longer time usually. And in this same communique, the institutions are asked to keep diversifying their offer, innovating the content, and also innovating the mode of the delivery of their educational offer. So innovation is strongly in that document. What about quality assurance agencies then? It is the task of agencies, I believe, to be enablers and to support. Perhaps most importantly, by ensuring that quality assurance and accreditation methods are well adapted to these flexible, innovative, student-centered approaches, using new modes of delivery, collaborating internationally, intersectionally. It really requires a lot from quality assurance. And quality assurance has traditionally been kind of the safekeeper, keeping the status quo, protecting the minimum standard, rather than being the courageous innovating encouragement method. So we have to be careful not to start impeding innovation in the quality assurance community. My view is that agencies should really try to create mode neutral methods for quality assurance, so that it wouldn't really matter whether it's online or not online, as well as kind of the basic criteria are met. And what I think it's very important is that quality assurance systems should really focus on the level of institutional quality assurance. External quality assurance is important because that gives the public accountability, it gives public information on the quality, but it all has to start at the institutional level. And if we have a stronger focus on institutional quality assurance, we can be more supple, more flexible, faster, and more diverse in the actual quality assurance processes. And indeed, one of the key principles for quality assurance in the European framework is that the institutions have the primary responsibility, not only for the quality, of course, but also for quality assurance. So agencies always come as a second step. The European standards and guidelines, which is our basic framework for criteria in quality, has integrated the philosophy of diversity and flexibility into it. So even though quality assurance systems in national level might sometimes be a little bit too rigid, the European context is strongly supporting and encouraging different modes of teaching and learning and different innovative ways of quality assurance as well. The agencies have the task of supporting institutions in responding to the rapid changes in an appropriate manner that meets the needs of the society. But between theory and practice, there is sometimes quite a bit of space. So in August last year, the co-authors of the European standards and guidelines, of which ENQA is one, the others are other stakeholder organizations like the Association of Universities and of Students, we submitted a statement that was entitled ESG in the Changing Landscape of Higher Education. And the statement reminds the users of the European framework that the use of these standards has to remain fit for purpose. It shouldn't be a checklist. It shouldn't be a straitjacket. They have to be sufficiently flexible to respond to the developing higher education landscape. And they have high potential to support innovation and diversity, differently to what we've usually been blamed for. And it is absolutely vital to have quality assurance processes that are not punitive, but that allow for experimentation. And I think agencies need to do quite a bit of work in reassuring the institutions that you can try, and you can even try and a little bit fail, and you are not risking too much. You're not risking your accreditation status, you're not risking your funding, etc. We have to allow for that margin of risk in favor of innovation. So that's all I wanted to start with. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, doctora Kelo.
Thank you, Mrs. Kello. Your presentation was very interesting. There is no doubt that quality and innovation in these times of accelerated change go hand in hand, and they couldn't be understood without the other. Now we will have this stage of Q&A, and we will have a first round of questions from the public. So I would like to invite Anne Barrera from the ULAC Foundation to take the floor and to ask one or two questions from the public for one or two of our panelists. Then we will have a second round. Go ahead, Anna.
It is pretty much difficult to resume the many questions that we obtained from different regions of the world. I am fascinated of the diversity of the audience. So it is pretty difficult to resume them. But I have one question which is not directed to any particular person, but I think that any of the panelists could a little bit elaborate on it. There were several questions related to the pandemic. And I would resume them in this way, and perhaps you may see whom like to answer to them. What measures have you taken to ensure continuity of teaching and research throughout the pandemic? And how did you keep up the quality of teaching and learning in this difficult and unusual situation?
Bueno, como no está dirigido a nadie en particular, está abierto el panel, ¿verdad? Para que algún panelista quiera tomar la pregunta.
Tal vez quisiera compartir lo que ocurrió en la experiencia de la Universidad de Costa Rica el año anterior. Yo creo que como
with the University of Costa Rica in the previous year, I would like to share that experience with all of you with the University of Costa Rica. Because of the pandemic, because everything was so fast, some of the initial decisions were a bit complex and complicated. When the university acknowledges that the situation requires better articulated decisions, they started a consultation process with several academic units. And that helped them to establish the practices that were okay and which the bottlenecks were. And I think that the academic community was able to participate in the preparation of the measures in order to exchange best practices, because there were some units that were already promoted innovation process that included technology. There were other units that were working, for example, in curricula management that included innovation processes. For example, one of the practices that was most promoted is to have communities of professors and teachers. Professors usually work individually, but the promotion of communities of professors to exchange ideas was something fundamental. We have tried to develop measures in order to follow up the work of those units and their curricular practices. It's important to give them the tools so that they can manage their work. And there is something that Maria mentioned, for example, in the innovation processes that we have gone through, we need to recognize that there is a high level of experimentation. There is also a high level of chances that you do the things wrong. You have to retrofit that roadmap to understand if those decisions could stay or not. I think that the project of the University of Costa Rica allowed the university to be better prepared for the rest of the pandemic. I cannot say that in 2021 there are some barriers. I know that there are barriers, but I know that the academic community and the institutional community understands that they have a better capacity to disrupt, to promote new elements, and also to include in an institution things that were not there before. That a possibility of socializing, of including all the academic units, I think that was key for our institution. Lea, you have the floor. I would like to what Susan mentioned. Effectively, we have a disruption. Universities in our context dedicated a lot of efforts to train their professors. That has been fundamental. We also try to identify the best platforms in order to reach the students. But the question also asks about the research side, not only what happened with the professors. So I think that universities with their observatories have contributed to the education systems, but they also have provided the country with information, because we have been able to learn what the situation of the professors was regarding how they manage the teaching processes. And also we know the situation of the students, how they manage their learning processes. Together with that, research has provided us information regarding the situation of professors and students regarding technology management, how they handle technology. 2020 was a complex year. In the beginning of 2021, I don't know if it's because of the expectation of a vaccine, but we feel more ensured. We know that we have the research and experiences from last year, and that is something that helped us a lot. I don't know if any of the panelists would like to talk about this question. This is the first round of questions prepared by Dr. Ana Barrera, and if not, we will continue with other questions.
Yes, just to contribute and add to what has been already said, I think our experience at University College was one of transformation. We received 5 hours notice that our university would close under the COVID pandemic. And we offered our first online assessment within 24 hours. So I think we learned something very interesting about the agility of our staff, but also the agility of our processes, because we had to put in place quite different decision-making processes, which were much faster, which were highly consultative. But to give you an example, for many years, we had discussed offering or having a video-based viva voce for the PhD examination. It became absolutely necessary to agree a policy and a process to do that in order to graduate our PhD students during the pandemic. So that was an example of the kind of transformation. It also made for very new partnerships in terms of academics, senior academics, management colleagues working to solve common problems for the university. So a very good example of that is many of our students on medical and healthcare programs were on clinical placement. So we needed to make a very quick response to be able to secure that situation. So that again required people to work together quite differently. And finally, the last one, assessment was a particular area of attention. So we established an operational group which met on a weekly basis to manage the integrity and security and the delivery of our assessments in the pandemic. So in a way, at our university, whilst not everything was perfect, we are very confident in terms of how we responded, that we maintained the quality of our teaching and learning and also our research activities. So thank you.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you, Mrs. Elizabeth. We will have a second round of questions because the public had many questions, and Anna will help us with that second round. But before that, I would like to ask Susan Francis this time. According to your experience or your vision, now there is a lot of concern because of the emergency of the pandemic forced all the universities to move from on-site education system to a remote education system. And there are doubts regarding the quality of the teaching and learning process because of the emergency, because we were not prepared, etc., etc. There are many doubts regarding the quality of those processes. And I think that the public is concerned about that, how we guarantee quality in this context. But I would like to ask you something else. Behind or beyond the emergency, I would like that we consider the future, what happens after the pandemic. According to your experience, Susan, which the strategies and the key actions would be and the universities should implement in order to have significant innovations in the curricula or also in teaching methods and learning methods, and also any other innovations in the education offer that we have. What is your vision after the pandemic, or what are the types of innovations that we need?
Thank you for your question. I think it's quite complex. We need other fora in order to answer this. I would like to share my screen once again because I would like to share with you some experiences that have been developed in the University of Costa Rica that includes several components that institutions should systematize and try to establish as strategies to foster innovation. The university since the 70s has had a concern regarding teachers, professors training. That's why it created instances for training professors. In a first stage, this has been related to a very systematized practice that did not take into account the context or the teaching dimension with other elements within universities. In the last years, that concept has evolved and professors' training has changed. The alternatives have been diversified, and prior to the pandemic, there was a network of professors' innovation that allowed two important topics. The university had a set of initiatives that nobody knew. It was important to disseminate them. Innovation appears as an individualized scenario, and we believe that higher education institutions should foster education through innovation through a platform to spread these ideas. Today, that network has developed into the Observatory of Professors Innovation, and it's trying to monitor innovation in order to socialize the conditions, the best practices, the achievements, the context and conditions that should be taken into account to foster that innovation. And that is part of the university, because I think that innovation should be an institutional policy, and structures should have the possibility of giving account of that innovation. That's why we need to think about processes that are more flexible. There are other experiences that I know. I know about the University of Costa Rica, but I want to share two things. One is called Aula Taller, that is like workshop, classroom workshop. And several things have become obstacles for innovation. The idea that in our regions we cannot innovate, that there are no resources to innovate, that we don't have possibilities to innovate, that they are demanding more than is possible. The Politécnico Colombiano Jaime Sasa Cadavid, a polytechnical institution, has developed a specific program for natural sciences, recognizing microcredits, as Elizabeth has pointed out, a different notion from the one we knew. Is not the formal credit that we know from the different courses, but complementary courses that, and answering to Victor's question, there's an acknowledgement that there's a need to develop that knowledge in the area of natural sciences. And in some cases, there are learning difficulties, and in other cases, there's involve different ways of learning within a normal classroom. This classroom or workshop finds different strategies based on other strategies, such as the ones that exist in University of Costa Rica, such as learning based on problems or team learning. These strategies that may be considered innovative, we see that the roles change. The professor stops being the educator and problemizes, recognizes that there is a set of information that needs to be organized, and helps the student work from that. There are 4 dimensions that were applied last year in the University of Costa Rica to systematize what we have learned during the first part of the pandemic in order to carry out this implementation process that is an academic and formal process. And I consider that these 4 categories allow me to work in innovation as well. Planning and institutional development, institution needs to find the capacities, the opportunities we have to implement innovation, how flexible we are. If our standards allow us for transformation, or structures are such that we need to think about innovation, but in order to fund my innovation, I need to present different budgets, different institutional conditions. We need to go over them, find opportunities so that universities can foster those changes. At the same time, there's a harmonization of the agendas. All structures should acknowledge that in terms of training of the students, that's the goal. There is a curriculum management section that has to do with accompanying the professors. Universities were devoted to a strong process of professor training, teaching training. Professors should feel that there are elements in order to be trained and rethink their teaching process all the time. But it needs to be supported. The responsibility is not just theirs. Also, innovation requires resources and infrastructure. We cannot guarantee professors, academic units, foster innovation without the resources. We are talking about technology, but we may be discussing the classroom workshop that I just mentioned. We have a lot of machine artifacts that allow us to carry out different experimentation, and we need to think about different digital resources that are key to work within the virtual space. And also the student dimension. Intervention is not one way. The student should feel supported in that process of innovation. In Costa Rica, 11 years have passed. The professor has the power and listen, and the student is passive. We cannot recognize great changes in previous education mechanisms. In university, we want students to think in a different way from one day to the other instantly. So I believe that actions that have to do with fostering innovation have to support the student that, well, provide tools, recognizing that this student is able to recognize these new experiences in a more humane way. Thank you, Susan. That's very interesting what you have shared. Undoubtedly, as Maria Kello mentioned, innovation requires experimentation. It requires people to be creative and take risks. When we innovate, maybe things may not turn out as we expected. Probably we need to take a step back and change our path. That is the path of innovation. Universities should have institutional policies for innovation, and we should also have experimental classrooms, labs, innovation labs, regarding the teaching and learning processes where we can take risk, where we can explore different modalities, modify the way we the way in which we teach and learn. I would like to know the European vision about this, the experience that you have from the point of view of a university. How has the university innovated? What specific actions have you implemented? And also the viewpoint of the QA agencies. What kind of things do you take into account to assess whether a university is being innovative or not? That is to say, what should we do? What actions, concrete actions and strategies should we carry out? I don't know if Elizabeth and Maria Keller would like to share their experience.
Okay. I seem to have a difficult slides. I'm not really sure why, so forgive me, I can post them afterwards. To respond to that question, I think one of the things that has occurred from my university as a consequence of the pandemic, but also the need to innovate, is that it made teaching much more public. So it actually opened a conversation within our institution and made teaching highly visible. And through our Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching and Learning, they curated in real time some excellent examples and practical approaches about how to continue teaching in a COVID scenario. So they provided these resources live through 2 websites. One was called Keep Teaching, which was directed towards teachers. And the other was a Keep Learning suite, which was focused on students, focused on learning, and there was a third theme addressed, which was around assessment. So there was a very specific set of resources, again, made available and updated live in relation to assessment. Accomplished ways of using digital education, shared their experience through a Teach Digi series of workshops, which again was offered in conjunction with our Centre for the Integration of Teaching and Learning. And that helped to disseminate good ideas in real time, but also to connect the community together. So that's how we coped. But two things have come from that. First of all, we now have a very clear digital education advisory group. Prior to that, we would have had a number of groups that either had a group of early adopters or enthusiasts who discussed and perhaps applied different digital approaches to education. And we had a committee, which was a formal committee of our Senate, which dealt with matters of digital education. But now we have a much more enriched advisory group, which is looking at the strategic potential for digital education into the future. And one of the very important dialogues, which is now open within our university, is a dialogue about what does the delivery of our education look like? Essentially a campus-based university and will remain so. So currently, the university in the future might be changed, adapted through the application of digital technology, how that might augment access, offerings, and so on. And in order to take this forward, we've actually brought together both the strategic aspect of teaching and learning and the strategic aspect of our quality assurance process. So the university is engaging in a thematic review of teaching and assessing with technology, which is currently underway. It has an appointed international review panel. They will be within the university for some time in mid-April. And the outcomes of that review will help to reinvigorate our digital education strategy, but also along with internal strategic discussions about what the future of the university looks like, we will move towards, I think it will be a hybrid educational model where we deploy the best of digital, but we retain an emphasis on the high value of face-to-face contact between students and staff. So I suppose in a way, we are moving in a much more committed way to the notions of the flipped classroom and blended models of learning. So thank you.
If I may, I say just one thing quite quickly. And I hope I will not lose my job because of what I say. But I think the best thing that quality assurance can do for innovation or to favor innovation is to take a step back. So I think the less external quality assurance agencies meddle with those innovative enterprises, the better. As long as you start to put criteria on something that is innovative, you stop the innovation there. It's kind of a contradiction of terms. Once you said, okay, innovative education should be this and this and this, you're already determining what it should be like. And so it's a contradiction. So of course, we cannot take an extreme risk. We have to make sure that the main things are guaranteed. But I think many European universities by now, and I think the same is true for everybody around the globe, have been through external quality assurance. They have been accredited. Their programs have been accredited. We can trust them a little bit at least. Please, let's do that. Let's trust them a little bit. And maybe they cannot play around with everything. You cannot, test with people's lives, because those students then need to invest their time and money on that. But surely something like micro-credentials, we should really let the institutions to use that as a playing ground. They can try and test, do co-provision with enterprises, do international provision with other institutions, etc. So there needs to be a bit of scope for playing around, trying out things, and agencies can be like a parent. If you teach your child to ride a bike and you hold them all the time, you will never know where they would go if they could choose themselves. But if you just take that little step and courage to let them go, then they'll find their own way. Thank you.
Excelente comentario. Muchísimas
Excellent
gracias.
comment. Thank you, Maria. Part of our idea that we have with the SC, UCA, and over global, our goal was that each of the institutions of Central America, each university has a lab or innovation lab. That in each university we have an experimental room that is properly equipped in order to try to test things. There are several methodologies like design thinking, project-based teaching, problem-based teaching, inverted classes. There are many methodologies, 10 or 15 probably, but we are not using them as professors. We are not exploring them. We do not manage them. But we need to stop the fear and start trying new things and to create the right environment for experimentation. For that, each institution should have an innovation policy, an innovation lab, and also experimental rooms. And those things that work well should be exhibited so that we can train and to prepare our professors in the new technologies that appear. And sometimes it's just because of the ideas brought by students or professors. But as you're saying, Leah, Maria, the quality assurance agencies need to provide a warranty for the public. And sometimes that is difficult and it's a bit rigid. And instead of being creative, we end up being not innovative, and we prevent or are a barrier to the innovation process. So we should know that the responsibility of innovation is on both sides, quality assurance agencies and also universities. I think that we are running out of time, so I would like to make a third round of questions, the last one. Ana Barrera could share with us some of the questions of our public for this third round. We are running out of time, so maybe I would like to choose one question that is for Elizabeth Nun. And it has to do with the qualifications and knowledge transfer and competencies in micro programs. Or this person says that is a reality that is occurring in our countries. And that is something that we need to take into consideration. And we cannot leave this to the market. We need to offer different possibilities to the students with flexible curricula and with the adequate quality levels. And the question is, what is the function of quality assurance systems in these new realities according to these needs that we have? Because the curricula tends to be consistent or homogeneous, and they do not promote diversity.
Okay, thank you. I think I like Maria's comment earlier on that sometimes you need to step back. I actually hold those values as well as somebody who works in quality. I think too much regulation stifles creativity. In respect of the function of quality assurance for micro-credentials particularly, I think this is a new and growing area of our practice. It's something that within Ireland, we currently have a new national project which has just commenced to look at this very question of how we develop agile and flexible quality assurance processes that are light and quick. So that's the first point. I think the other thing that I would say is that micro-credentials are new, but they're not that new either, in the sense that many universities have worked over the years to, for example, offer work integrated learning opportunities, both for students going out to employers, but also for employers and their employees to engage with the institution. So there are many instances of educational offerings which now would come into that category of micro-credentials because they are accredited and can be used for the purposes of other awards. So I think we start from a very strong base. And one of the key, I think, factors in terms of higher education providers taking control of this space, or at least not being driven by the market, is building effective relationships with employers' needs, and also the needs of citizens and students in terms of identifying those, the specific focus of their micro credentials. And in that regard, I suppose information about skills needs in respect of the economy is one of the key data sets that might very well inform the approaches to particular micro credentials.
Muchas gracias. Yo creo que el tiempo
Thank
se
you.
nos ha
I think that we have run out of time. And I saw that Adrian Bonilla was there and he wanted to make a comment. So we will be concluded with Adrian's comment because we are running out of time. I have a lot of questions and the public had a lot of questions, but we are we don't have time. So Adrian, if you have any comments to make, you have the floor. It seems that Adrian is not now here. So we will be concluding today's discussion. There is no doubt the pandemic is accelerating these processes of digital change in many areas of human activities. Digitalization is already a reality. Education is lying behind, but we are trying to accelerate our processes. Technological progress that have a disruption potential is clear, and the pandemic has accelerated of this. But I think that the pandemic could be an opportunity to start to change, and we accelerate innovations in education. Dear colleagues, this depends on us. This is on us. Students, universities, and QA organizations. This is on us. I would like to conclude this forum by inviting all of you to present proposals and to actively participate in the 9th Congress of the CSUCA that will be on-site and remote in April. And the headquarters will be the Autonomous University of Honduras, but most of the Congress will be remote. This will be a great opportunity to identify the paths ahead for Central American universities. The deadline to present proposals is April the 19th, so we have time still. Those proposals need to be simple, concrete. And if you need more information regarding the proposals or the format of the Congress, you can visit the website of the Congress, that is congreso2021.suca .org. I would like to thank all the panelists for your great contributions, and also the public because of their great patience and for your questions. Those questions are very valuable. And have a nice day and blessings for everybody.